Welcome to the Wrap Party podcast, powered by VeryBusy.io. This time we're joined by Sean Arbabi, a seasoned expert in photography and production who takes us through his journey in the industry. From his early influences to the challenging of managing creative teams, Sean shares invaluable lessons learned along the way. We also talk about the power of collaboration, how understanding team dynamics can elevate both productivity and creativity, and why building drama-free, respectful environments is key to success. There was so much to talk about with Sean. His episode is broken up into two parts. Here's the first one. Hope you enjoy. Hey, welcome to the Wrap Party. Today we have Sean Arbabi with us. Now, Sean has worn a lot of hats throughout his career. Photo studio director, producer, leader, educator, published writer, I believe, too, as well, right?
Yes.
And I'm really excited to have you here today because we have some really in-depth stuff to talk about revolving more around photo teams, production, kind of workforce in general. So thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, I'm excited. I love talking about this stuff too. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, like we've had a little pre-production here before when we started talking about things, and it can keep on rolling. There's like never an ending for these kind of topics because you can get so in depth and in deep with them. So having you here with your breadth of knowledge and your expertise, we're going to try to cover as much as we can. In the time we have, but no, thanks for being here.
We didn't have these too. When we were starting in our careers, or at least my career, I didn't have things like this that I could, refer to and learn from. So I love sharing this because I think it helps the new influx of creatives coming into our field and helps them understand a better coverage of what we do and how we get there. So
I think in the long term, hopefully it populates out. People are more educated. People are more aware of things in the industry. We all rise together, right?
That's right.
The sharing, the no gatekeeping stuff.
Exactly.
But yes, thanks again for being here. And I want to kind of just jump right into learning more about you, your kind of upbringing in this industry in your career. So do you want to start us off with kind of how did your career start out? How did you get into the field of photography, production, and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'll even take it back a little further. I picked up a camera when I was 11 years old, and for some reason, something told me that I knew I'd be a photographer the rest of my life. My career has morphed a bit. But, and in high school, it's very funny. I share this with a lot of people. And when I'm also doing lectures, I got an F in photography in high school. And then I got an A the next, semester when I wanted to prove my teacher wrong.
I see, though. Yeah.
What's that?
That's a common theme I keep hearing about, how they, in like an educational sense, they were never good at the arts classes. But once they got out and explored their own, it was like,
I share it because I think it's good to know that you can come from one place and get to another. Yeah. I think I wasn't disciplined in high school to do what this teacher wanted me to do. And so, of course, us creatives sometimes can go outside the box. But
right. Yeah.
And then I read a book at 17 called Mountain Light. And I was interested in outdoor photography at the time. And Galen Rowell, a National Geographic photographer that grew up in my hometown in the East Bay of the San Francisco Bay Area, Albany. He wrote this book, Mountain Light, and he had 75 photos of his best photos and his philosophical kind of approach behind how he took these or how he captured these, the luck, the moments. And it was the first moment I connected to my artistic mind. I didn't really understand what I was doing until somebody described it. And then I went off a couple years later to Brooks Institute. And I got my Bachelor's of Arts in Commercial Photography. And after that, I sent out 150 resumes with no job offers. And so I just started my own business at that time. And during that time, I was working with, I joined ASMP, American Society of Media Photographers. And then a few months later, I saw an ad for a studio photographer part-time needed in the East Bay. And I applied, and out of a dozen people or so, I got the position, luckily, and it allowed me to take half of my knowledge from Brooks and apply it to studio photography and do this and get paid on a weekly, monthly basis, and then be able to continue to build my outdoor photography business.
Yeah.
My career morphed slowly over time, and luckily the owner of the business really understood. He was an artist himself, and he knew that I would slowly transition out of this. And so about 4 or 5 years in, My outdoor editorial magazine photography business was going well, and I was able to step away from. I was a kind of a jack of or a team of one, the studio manager, studio photographer,
Yeah.
and I had art directors and designers and all that working with, but I ran this little studio, and so I moved into my main love, which was travel and outdoor photography and working with magazines and stock photography. And then it just slowly morphed. I began to add in workshops and lectures after about 8, 9, 10 years of after
Okay.
graduating. But I also wanted to evolve my commercial photography and start to take all the knowledge. That's one thing I've always tried to do in my career is take all of my knowledge and apply it to keep stepping up in places that I want to be. And so I started
Yeah.
working with resort companies, travel companies, and models and hair and makeup stylists and all of that to do commercial shoots on location. I
Nice.
produced many of the shoots, depending on the budgets, and sometimes we
Yeah.
had ADs there and editors and all of that. But so I did that. After about 10 years, I had gone from outdoor photography, adventure photography, and then into all the resorts and different places I had been, and working with people. I applied lifestyle photography,
Yeah.
and so I
That's a
did
cool
that.
introduction, though. That's like,
Yeah, it was Brooks was really kind of a base to be able to take all the lighting skills and the studio skills, all of those details, and meeting other photographers, having them come and lecture,
yeah.
taking all of that, and then being able to apply it. So a lot of outdoor photographers don't necessarily know studio lighting and
Right.
strobe,
Yeah.
and so I was able to. That was something I loved that challenge, and my goal was to step into any situation and photograph it well. And so I continued to try to evolve my photography and improve my photography as I went. And then it worked naturally into doing lifestyle and advertising and photography campaigns and things like that. So that continued until about 2016. And then I went through kind of a change in my life, some personal changes, and
Okay.
I didn't want to travel so much. I had teenage daughters at the
Mm-hmm.
time. And so I'd also been for a couple of years, working here and there with studios, and I wanted to really do it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
I don't know how other
Nice.
commercial photographers are, but we're pigeonholed in our own worlds. We're often we get together with a group, we do projects, and then we go back off to
Yeah.
our offices or studios. And so I took a position to run the studio at Tailored Brands, which was over a number of men's clothing brands.
Yeah.
Men's Warehouse is the big one, or Joseph A. Bank, K&G Superstore, Twin Hill, Moore's in Canada. They had a number of brands that they slowly whittled down to their main 4, 5, 6 brands. And I took the studio position to head the photo studio and direct the photo studio there. About a team of 15, 16 people, about 50 to 75 on call and freelancers. So, and then it continued to morph. I don't want to. My wife always says, "Step up and step back." So I don't know if you want to interject anything. Have any
No, this
questions?
is great. I like hearing the trajectory and sequence here of how you were growing upon each past like kind of role you were carrying. So
Yeah,
stepping into this new role here as, the director of the photo studio dealing with a huge team. I'm curious from working from yourself as a photographer, producing your own shoots, but now stepping into this more, I don't, was it kind of like a 9 to 5 kind of
yes,
job more so? And
or
then
more
managing
like a 9 to 7,
9 to 7.
or
Okay. Yeah.
9 to 8,
Still
yes,
like a
but
10
yes,
hour day, but yeah.
it was, yeah, exactly.
What was that transition like, going from maybe the freedom of working for yourself then into, having a larger team that you're daily in charge of
Yeah.
and maybe more of like a daily structured environment of kind
Oh,
of
very much
a
so.
company, right?
Yeah, corporation. And so for me, people often think freelancers are, oh, you get to work whenever you want to and set your own hours. And I was a disciplined freelancer where you have to work as hard as anybody else and put
Harder
in the
sometimes
office.
probably.
I'm sorry?
I said harder at many times too. Yeah.
It's true. I mean, I used to pull probably 5, 10 all-nighters every
Yeah.
year as a freelancer, and so luckily had that discipline. But I also I'd managed people in my past. I had in other jobs before I started my career. I had managed budgets for photo shoots. I had produced shoots. I had helped art direct. I had done all of these things. I wrote books and articles for a couple books for Random House. I did videos for Peach Pit Press. I did articles for Outdoor Photographer, Lightroom Magazine, Photoshop User, Peterson's,
Yeah,
all
you
of
name
those.
it.
And yeah, it was, my philosophy was, and I wanted to shoot for National Geographic when I was doing outdoor photography, and people, I would say, well, somebody has to do it, so why can't it be me until they tell me I'm horrible at it,
Yeah.
So when it came to this job at Tailored Brands, I remember the VP of advertising, knowing that I was a commercial photographer, said, "This isn't a shooting position. You know that, right?" And that wasn't even a question. I knew exactly what I was stepping into. It was the bigger question for me was how fast can I get understand this whole process, because it's a very complicated process amongst multiple teams, and how fast can I address potential issues and solve them, and how fast can I gain the trust of people that have never worked with me, or that opened the studio and I had 10 years earlier. So that was the challenge. And at that point in my late 40s, I had known that you kind of become very comfortable with yourself. With experience comes calmness. And so you say, listen, I'm not here to prove anything to anyone. I'm here to be myself. And if they get the value I bring, great. And I think we can go far together. And if they don't, there's Steve Jobs was fired from his job.
Well,
So,
yeah.
and
Yeah, it
so
happens.
you have to bring in your experience. And luckily, I would say within 3 to 4 months, I understood the job, my specific responsibilities. But you continue to gain more and more knowledge throughout
Oh yeah.
the
On the
the
job.
months and the years. And within 6 months, to be very open and honest, there were some challenges or people that maybe did not believe in what I was bringing, and I remember very distinctly having a meeting with my VP of advertising, and I had a knock at my office door, and it was all four of my managers, and they came to my defense in a sense and
Oh,
said
nice. Yeah.
they understood the philosophical approach and the operational approach I was bringing. And they also understood that I had been on both sides of production. I had been a creative and a freelancer and a photographer, and I've also been now on the other side of leading teams. And
Yeah.
that said it all. I mean, that was a huge moment for me. Those four people are amazing at what they do and are fantastic managers. And for them to come and say, listen, he's doing exactly what we need, and you can't please everyone. And so, but I luckily pleased the people that I cared most about. And
Yeah.
so,
It mattered.
yeah, so that was the start of the next 4 years of production that we helped make huge improvements, and we could have done even more.
Yeah. When you stepped into this job, was it a job? Were you replacing somebody else? Was there a previous position like that, or was it a new position that you were filling and creating, kind of building up the studio?
Oh, that's a great question. There was a studio director before me. That person managed the on-location shoots and the studio shoots. They had changed the position to only manage the studio, which
Okay,
I
they
thought
broke it
was
up then. Yeah.
good, because when you looked at the outdoor shoots and trying to produce all of those and run a studio, you're really spread thin.
Yeah,
Really
I can only
spread thin
imagine.
amongst. I mean, we had 200 plus projects a year, I believe, and producing tens of thousands of assets.
Yeah.
In a multi-bay, also shared services studio. So you're working with multiple brands that all have different style guides and approaches and needs. And so, remind me of, you asked, oh yes, the previous person. So when
Yeah.
left, they had I think almost a year block, maybe 9 month to a year block of no studio manager. And so when I learned that, I realized I have to take as much stuff off of my managers that it belongs to me, that I'm responsible for, not in a grab, but more of they've been doing it now. They've been together doing studio managing, and they all have my merch manager, my head stylists, my retouch manager, my copy manager. They didn't need to be doing those things. I needed to pull those back so that I could make an instant impact, hopefully.
Yeah, makes sense.
And
Yep.
so that's what I began to do. And then there was I don't know, a three-prong approach. Part of it was learn their process. The other part was understand what the work environment is and continue, either make it better or continue to make it more positive and supportive. And then the other approach was what needs to be fixed. Don't jump in and do these sweeping changes. Make small incremental fixes and work with your team to understand what you're doing and if they agree with those fixes or not.
Yeah, I mean that's smart. I think the most of the time when you hear of the disasters is when people come in and change everything fast,
Yes.
and people get caught off guard. They get uncomfortable. It's for a complicated process to change all in one too. Like you can't
It is.
imagine it would be that efficient.
No, and you're right. And I've been a part of that. I mean, I've been a part of sweeping changes with companies. They come in and they remove positions and they don't realize what positions are truly important, or at least in my opinion, which positions were important. And so making those small changes, I think I'm a pretty secure I always say I'm very secure with my insecurities.
Nice,
And
yeah.
so I'm a secure person in that way where I'm not looking to lead with an iron fist. I believe in servant leadership. And so what I want to do is I always have to tell people I am not above you and you're not beneath me. Yes, the org chart may look that way, but we are together. We are a professional adult. I'm not working with a group of teenagers or
Yeah.
children. These are professional adults that, if you have the right team, are very good at what they do and have a lot of great solutions and experience and knowledge to bring. If you don't listen to them and if you don't say, listen, I just have different responsibilities. You have to understand my responsibilities. You have to understand why I have to do things, report things, why we
Yeah,
have to
right.
continue a certain workflow and KPIs and numbers and all of that,
Right.
and budgets. And I have to understand what you do and help you succeed. And so I think when you take that approach, then you're not so nervous to say, I've got to prove people what I can lead, and that, oh, how dare they disagree with me? I have to fix that. I have to show them that I'm in charge. No, I don't believe that. I
Well, no,
think
and
that,
that transparency I think is essential when building a team like that. You'd think, because I mean, you need to understand what other person do,
Yeah.
why they do things in order to react appropriately. Maybe not
Exactly.
take things personally and things like that, right?
yeah. Well, so I also know that in the past, I used to scare people, scare people, not in a scary way, but two different ways I would do it. When I worked with art directors, I would scare them because when I was shooting, I was never happy with what I was getting completely. I was never content. I
Yeah.
always wanted to push as much as we could until the last light or in the last moment. And you're thinking, I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I have it. And you're working, and then you get back and you look at all your film back then or your images and you go, oh, we have it pretty good here.
We had it on
And
the first take. Yeah. No.
yeah, exactly. But it would scare art directors because they wanted to hear that you had it. Well, I just didn't believe in jumping up and down and saying, "Oh, this is going to be the best shot ever." I was focused in the moment, and I was about continuing to push to get the shots that we needed, whatever it was. And so I realized that's how I scared people on that side. And then the other side was when I went into the corporate studio sides of things. I began to scare some people because I asked every question under the book. And most people understood what I was doing, but others would say, he doesn't know anything. He's asking all these questions. And you're like, no, I need to know what your acronyms are. They're different from
Yeah.
another studio. I need to know how fast your strobe pack firing rates are. I need to know what your process documents are. What
He's
your
asking
system.
questions because he knows too much. That's why.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And so, so a few people thought that, but I think the other people understood he's coming in brand new. He needs to gain knowledge of everything. And then you hopefully slowly gain their trust so that they see that you're not coming in to ask them questions about how to challenge them or call them out or anything. It's about fixing stuff. It's about
Yeah.
helping them succeed. And so that was my approach.
Well, yeah, being put in and understanding the process so you can see what needs help, right?
Yeah. And it takes time. I mean, I remember having a meeting with all the merchants about, let me think, maybe a year and a half in. And a year later, I thought, oh, I would have done that meeting completely different because I discovered so many other details after that meeting about the supply chain and how the
Oh, yeah.
issues and challenges we were having. And I realized, so you evolve, you gain more knowledge, and you can't have everything right off the bat. But the only way you can find out is to do as much research while you're running a three-ring circus of a photo studio every day and all the
Right.
crazy things that are going on to make all these shoots happen. So
Well,
it's a juggling. It's a balance.
what do you think were some of the like? Were there some specific things from your past experience? Being a photographer, of course, and also producing some of your own shoots, having that experience for years over end. What kind of insights do you think you had heading into that job that perhaps somebody who didn't have that background, didn't have the background on the creative side had when stepping into directing an actual photo studio?
So there were a couple of things. One, well, there's probably more, but the two things off the top of my head I could think of is photography and our budgets.
Yeah.
I remember when it comes to project management, I wrote a little piece in LinkedIn. I remember a financial analyst having us all in a room talking about the next yearly budget, and somebody raised their hand and said, "What if I can't meet my budget?" And he said, "What do you mean? I have to meet my budget. Why can't you meet your budget?" And I think his point was, if you're not meeting your budget, you're not planning, if you're not meeting your projected budget at least, you're either not planning or communicating, or if there's been changes, then you have to ask and tell them how it impacts your budget. But you have to be incredibly detailed. And every budget I got from clients, I don't recall ever going over a budget. And if you did, you had to really make sure you got that approved. And so being tight in your project management, producing, and your budgets was important. And corporations care about that. Your accountants, your financial people care about those, and they want explanations. And so I had that part. I also had the part of understanding as a freelancer, when you work, you don't want to get paid in 90 days or 120 days or
Oh,
get paid
nice.
partially. You want to get paid on time. And so it was my responsibility for all of the bills being paid, as I was also the e-com photo producer.
Okay.
And so I began to pick off some of the challenges that were happening where there was some delays in payments, and it was being lost in the kind of bureaucratic, passing off of bills and understanding. And so I began to try to fix those, and that was really nice because then all of a sudden your vendors were like, thank you
Yeah.
for getting us paid on time.
That's like a
And
morale thing too for like vendors, teams, and stuff like that. Like, hey,
yes.
they're paying us on time. They respect us. They respect our time. Like that's what it feels like.
Yes. And, I'll say this. This was told to me, so no disrespect to the previous director of that studio. Plus, there was a gap between that, so maybe some things changed.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to everybody that was working there. There was wonderful people, amazing people that work there that I'm still connected with and friends with and still work with. But I had heard, and maybe this is one or a few people's approach, was that if you made mistakes at the studio, you would not be asked back. And then over a process, I realized that many mistakes were happening because we weren't really sharing all the processes and details of a campaign, of a project with the freelancers, information they needed. And so then it turned around to, in 3 or 4 years, people wanted to come and work there. And they understood what I was trying to do along with everyone else, and everyone else were buying into this approach of we are a family, we work hard, we play hard together, we care about each other. I don't care about mistakes, I care about how they happen so we can fix them next time. That's what I care about. And so, like you said, with the with morale improving with vendors, that's always your approach. Is to people have a misconception. I think when they think when I work with some people, they think, oh, he wants everybody to like him. If people don't like me, and some people don't like me, and that's fine. I don't have to be. We don't have to be around each other, or we have to, depending sometimes. But it's not about that. To me, it's about the more you are recognized and appreciated, and that there's an enthusiasm and positivity within creative work environments, the more productive you can be.
Yeah.
And it's proven now. There are studies out there that put one toxic person in a group and then took that person out first and then put them in, and they watched that group's productivity decline by 25, 30%.
Wow. Yeah.
And I mean, dramatic. And so to me, you want to go to a place, you want to work at a place where you enjoy working there, or at least you see that people appreciate what you do.
Yeah.
And so morale is critical to budgets, to productivity, to quality. It ties into all of that, and you have to recognize that.
Totally.
So
What you said there reminds me of when back in my photo assisting days, I had a photographer I worked for told me, he said, I don't care if the client doesn't like me, but I want them to respect me.
yes,
And that always rung with me because it's like, yeah, there are hard truths, especially in our field of you got to be honest, and some people won't like it. It's a creative field. It's very subjective. It's, whatnot. But, if you can walk off a set and they respect how you created, how you managed things, how you did this, that's when you get hired back.
yeah.
But yeah, that's,
And there's different approaches, and sometimes those approaches clash. But
yeah,
my approach was always to, you don't have to like me, but like you said, you have to understand what I'm trying to do. And what I'm trying to do is help you as well.
yeah,
And what I'm also, again, I'm a big proponent of the term I don't know. So if a team asked me something and I don't know, does anybody else know? Or let me go and find
figure
out.
it out. Yeah.
Either I haven't been given this piece of information by, through my onboarding or training, or if you have it, share with me. But none of us know everything. So
Yeah.
stop in this fake it or make it industry. That doesn't work sometimes when you
It
have
shows
to have
eventually. Yeah.
it can come up to bite you when you have people thinking, oh, I better not ask these questions, I'm going to get in trouble. That's not what
Oh,
we're
yeah.
doing here. It's what we're doing is we're trying to create the best production we can, the best imagery, the highest quality, matching what the brand strategy is,
Yeah.
matching what the expectations are in the briefs, going through all of that. And so that was the other side of what I was bringing from freelance. Was I understood photography. I understand balance of elements, lighting, art direction, styling. I'm not a stylist. I can't style. I'm not one of those, but I understand what stylists need. I understand what models need and what we need from them. And so I was able to bring all of that to the studio. And then having the Brooks background, I had interned with Dean Collins, who was a very well-known commercial photographer in San Diego. Understanding like high quality, controlled photo studio lighting, paying it with those technical aspects and creative aspects and mirroring them together. That's the other part that I was able to bring, I think, from being a commercial photographer for so many years.
I think that's so important, having that photographic knowledge when you're on the producing side of things, because there's those little instances where they could really matter, knowing what questions
Very
to
true.
ask, and how to react to certain things. So
When you get a model for a day standing there, they're getting paid a good chunk of change. And they're on set and you see people putting suits on them and they're tailoring them and they're standing there and people are thinking, wow, they're getting paid, 3, 4 times what I'm getting paid right now. And I'm thinking that's a day rate. They don't work that 40 hours, But do you understand how destructive to your back it can be to try to stand on
It
a
can't be
hard
easy. Yeah.
surface 8 9 hours, and then to, you know, you have to you can't oversimplify each position. You have to
No, not at
understand
all.
there's so much to it. And so when you show that appreciation, I started getting models saying, Sean, I love coming here. You've created this kind of family environment. I watched people, stylists, switch sets because they were better at certain laydowns, and they were freelancers that are in a sense competing against each other, but they switched sets, and I asked, hey, what's
Yep.
going on? Oh, I'm better at, laydown pants, and I'm better at laydown, shirts.
Nice. Yeah.
And so watching that kind of stuff happen was fantastic. I'll also say this, Peter. There's a lot of eyes going on in this conversation right now. By no means do I ever forget that there is no way, especially in a photo studio setting, no way to be proud of any things that I'm proud of as accomplishments if it wasn't for having an amazing team that busted their rears every day and
Oh,
were
totally.
great at what they did. And so it's I might say I, but I'm always thinking we. It's really
Hmm.
about what we did together, what we do together, and creating that atmosphere as well.
Of course.
Um, so
Of course.
that's important.
So I'm interested now after talking through this about the hiring side of stuff when you're in charge of a team. And what's been your experience with when you had to bring on new talents? Whether it be on the
Mhm.
post production side or styling, or maybe you're looking for a new photographer. Like, what's been, I guess, walking into the, we're kind of still talking about this first main job you took on under this role.
Yeah.
What's that process like for you? How do you find a good fit, or like a kind of, you talk about building these teams that,
Yeah.
and they're kind of like family. How do you find that chemistry, I guess I want to call it.
It's organic. It happens multiple ways, I think. I love that it's a big thing. It's a big important aspect to me that the people I've worked with in the past are willing to work with me again. I've been really thankful for when people say, I'll work with you any day." That makes you, you need that. We have really high pressure, high, stress work. We're really moving fast. We're all barking out directions at each other. I need this, and so I can really be proud to say in the 4+ years I was at Tailored Brands, I don't ever remember having an argument with my four managers. Um, we we figured out what the best solutions were, and we made them together. Or if I had to make the call, I made the call and I took the responsibility. If it was their idea, then I gave them the credit. I wasn't going to take the credit on their great idea or solution. But I think through that approach, then you get people again, that when you build that trust, then your retouch manager comes to you and says, hey, we need a couple of freelancers. I use these people, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
And if you have that trust and you believe that person is really good at what they do, and then you can bring them in. There's also been decisions that some people have made, and I thought, I don't know if this is a great decision because there's some personal aspects of it, but you have to own this decision because I'm not sure if this is the best decision. So if you are going to bring in, let's say, the husband of this other person who works here, recognize that there's a couple working now in the same area, and if you think that that works and they are able to separate work from personal life, then great. But I think it's just building a trust and then speaking to people and saying, do you have some photographers? And then
Yeah.
you get emails and resumes and links to sites for digital techs and assistants and photographers and stylists and all of that. And I would lean to my head stylist or my managers. And then I would also take my experience. One of the most important things, first, obviously, is talent and in that position and being good at
Yeah.
that position and how they approach their position. But another part is how are they going to fit into this team? There's
Hmm.
team dynamics is really critical, so they have to fit into their role. And everyone should be able to have a feeling of being a part of a team, but they also have to know where their role is and when they should step in or not step in. You know,
Yeah,
DP
totally.
shouldn't be
Totally.
giving model directions. The photographer should be.
Yeah.
There's nothing rude toward the DT, but unless the photographer says, "Hey, look at the image," and then tell them if their arm is should
Yeah.
be more forward. If they have that, then great. But team dynamics is huge, and so you look for people that come with that same philosophy. Because if they don't, then it begins to ruffle feathers, and then you're having different personality types are
Yeah.
tough. But and then the other part of it for me is finding no nonsense people that are as drama free as possible. Life
Drama
happens,
free. Yeah.
you know.
That sounds nice.
Drama free is just critical. We all have difficult things we're going through in life, and you sometimes need to talk about them. And you can and there are situations where you can, or that you have to. Hey, listen, I have an elderly parent. I can't come in for this shoot. We need to find another assistant or another DT. Things happen, but people who are straightforward and honest and are drama free, tell me really what's happening, so that I can adjust or fix it. That's really important as
Yeah.
well. And then you keep those people that are drama free. I know of a retoucher who is fantastic at what they do, and there has not been one that he'd never discussed his life at all. He could, but you're in business, you're on deadlines, you're being paid,
Yeah.
so to be able to just say, we need this, can you take care of this, have that drama free is fantastic.
No.
And then, if somebody who is drama free has something happen, you have to adjust as a manager and help them through that process, and not say, oh my gosh, they're being,
Oh
no,
yeah.
things happen. You have to care.
Inevitably, something's going to happen at some point. And,
Exactly.
you know.
And if you care as a manager, it's a lot more work, but that is your job. That is your job as a producer, as a project, manager. It's your job to care and to make adjustments when necessary, especially for all-star people that may have had something happen.
Yeah.
So, we've gone through it. I mean, and I won't go into details because they're personal to people,
Oh yeah.
but
No,
we've had, there's deaths and
yep.
all kinds of car accidents, all kinds of situations, and you have to build a work environment where people can speak freely about creative ideas and solutions, and also address uh, when life comes up. So, but if it's always, every month, every week, there's something happening,
Something's
that,
going on. Yeah.
yeah, and it's not to be not empathetic to that person, but it's business now, and you have to run it like a business, and
Yeah.
you can't. It falls on you when those things start occurring.
Yeah.
So
But
it's yeah.
coming from this, kind of bridging over to kind of the nuts and bolts when you get into production and post production and stuff, I'm interested now in kind of diving into maybe some more technical things.
Sure.
And the first thing that comes to mind is when leading a team like this, especially in a studio sense, when there's consistency in brand and lighting and all kinds of creativity and stuff like that. How do you keep, when you have your teams, perhaps multiple teams, multiple sets, things change, like you just said, there could be different people coming in and going. How do you keep things consistent? How do you keep the bandwagon going? How do you keep the visuals consistent? How do you keep the end result consistent? What's kind of the basis of all that?
So for me, I'm a right brain, left brain person. I'm left-handed. I think they say left-handeds are their minds work very differently. I don't know if that's
Well,
true.
maybe. I don't know. I'm right-handed, so I don't know.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and so I don't believe in astrology, but I'm a Gemini, and people say, "Oh, you're Jekyll and Hyde." Oh, you are too.
Yeah, I'm a Gemini,
Right.
June 11th.
And so, but if I'm not Jekyll and Hyde, but I do have two personalities, and one of them is I love being creative and free and thinking outside the box. And the other part is I love being structured and organized and detail oriented. And it's hard to find that sometimes in creatives, but I love marrying those two things. And so
It's funny you
consistency.
say that because I'm the same way.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Maybe it is a Gemini thing. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. But it could be, or, or it just could be how we were raised. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's how I work. And for consistency, I think that is critical. I had a client talk to me, consulting a major retailer, and they talked about their challenges with freelancers wanting to apply their own ideas and techniques to e-com shoots, and how difficult it was to gain consistency. And they asked me about that. And I said, and this may sound harsh, but I said, if you want to get creative and you want to apply these wonderful lighting techniques and ideas and all of that, that's really more for editorial photography, for ad campaigns and different types of shoots. But if you're doing shots on white backgrounds, or you're doing the mains or the specific alts that have to be incredibly consistent with color, with lighting, with styling, if you're not doing it, you're not doing the job. And
Yeah.
then I need to find somebody that believes that the wonderful creativity comes from following this very technical process document that we've created that says we need you to use this lens at this distance with this softbox that's at 45 degrees, it's off 3 feet off to the right side with this fill card. That is where the details matter in being creative. And it's might be glamorous. So I know some people that love doing that, and so it's
Oh
very
yeah.
it's glamorous to them to shoot 40 shirts in a day, and then those shirts go online with 40 other photographers maybe over time that have shot them, and if they all look the same and no one knows how they were shot, that's the goal.
That is right.
So you find those personalities that love that technical and are willing to follow and understand the goals and needs. And then the other creative ones that might be incredibly talented visual creators, then you can maybe have them work in the other side where there are deep challenges for on location shooting where the light is changing and all of that. And so I'm a big believer in process documentation and updating it when you can. I'm a big believer in providing that information throughout your team to new people with training and onboarding, but also to freelancers. Because again, as I mentioned earlier, when I started delving into problems at certain studios, I started realizing that the freelancers were making mistakes most of the time because they just didn't have the information.
Yeah, makes sense.
And whether it's that they have to sign a mutual NDA or whatever it may be, if you're worried about internal processes, they're already going to come in and have those processes, and they
Yeah.
should know them if they need to do it correctly. You have to communicate to them, the proper. Oh, you have the style guide from last quarter that you don't have the changes. That's not on you. That's on us.
Yeah.
So I began to show this in studios, and people began to realize, oh, he actually cares, because he's not just saying, "Oh, who was that? Who was on set? Oh, it was Joe. That guy should have known better." No, I found, okay, did Joe have the lighting guide? He didn't. Oh, and so he set it up what he thought it looked like, and he didn't set it up correctly. That's on us. So you have to own that. So that through all of those processes, I think become, and then you begin to pick off little tiny details of redundancy. Wait,
Yeah.
you're sharpening on set, and then the retouchers are sharpening, and then the dam is resharpening, and then the web team is resharpening. Let's cut that out. Let's figure out where the best place is to do that. So through all those processes, you begin to build consistency, and you have to address mistakes. Sometimes mistakes are happen because they just missed it. I mean,
Yeah.
I missed a mistake. We all happens. Sometimes mistakes happen again because people are not coordinating together, and they're rushing, and they don't realize that they're shooting differently. And I've watched it, and there's been some, when I wasn't over a certain shoot, but you're facilitating a studio, and then you're watching two sets have just switched lighting, and they're supposed to be shooting the same thing, and you're thinking, no, no, no. And you go and you talk to the AD and everybody who is running those sets, and they don't make those changes. It's you just think, oh, this is going to
What's gonna
affect,
yeah.
and you have to either pull them aside or you have to say, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's going to occur. Either we make these changes and fix them, or this is going to be the result. And
Yeah.
if somebody asks me why don't these look the same, I'm not responsible for this specific shoot, but I'm giving you the information.
Yeah.
So, that's I think how you build consistency is through, and you analyze every process that you can. Luckily, at certain studios, I had great people that would come up to me and say, Sean, you've been here a month, or you're consulting, or whatever the case is. Can I tell you what I think is going wrong? And I would say, not going wrong, but here's the challenges. Here's our inconsistencies.
Well, that's nice.
And fantastic. I would say, bring it on. Tell me. Some things I could take with a grain of salt and say, okay, that doesn't apply so much for me, or I can give that to someone else. But in other situations, I could immediately say, oh, really? Oh, okay. Oh, we're shooting you're shooting a Mark II on these sets, but a Mark IV on these sets. And that's what's causing the color inconsistencies, or you don't have color checker cards, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And that was so helpful because they've been there for years, and they had told people. What's that?
I said they're living it. They know.
They are living it. Yeah. And they also cared enough when somebody came in, they wanted to tell them, listen, this is what we've been seeing. If they've shared it with 2, 3, 4, 5 leaders, and you come in and you don't address those, and you agree with those mistakes or inconsistencies, and you don't fix them, you haven't done your job.
Yeah.
So that was my not thing that kept me up at night, but that was my little internal goal. 2 goals I would always have with any place I go to. One is, if I don't make the proper changes to fix all this intricacies of digital production, I'm not doing my job. And then my other little goal for myself was always, let me see if I can save my salary. Let me see if I can save my consulting fee. So when we get done, I was free pretty much. They didn't have to pay for me because I saved them that much or more.
That's cool. That's a cool way to think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I can proudly say at a couple of studios, one, I was at a studio not too long, so they cut the budget 20%, and I saved that by the time I left.
Making your own job security, right?
What's that?
Making your own job security.
Exactly. And you bring up another good point about job security that I'll mention. But so that's, to me, is job security. And the other one was, I wanted to save my salary, and we saved 10 to 15 times that.
Oh, there you go.
And I don't know if it was the first year, but every year after that, we saved that much in productivity. Now, as a team, and making decisions to convert some freelancers to full-time positions, or vice versa, to remove equipment, to purchase $100,000 of Pro Photo 10 power packs for fashion that would recycle faster, that could build consistency and create 3, 4, 5 extra shots in the shot count each day on a set that you're paying $8,000 for.
I mean, yeah, those are, right.
They pay themselves off and more. And so that was, that's some of my 2 little goals. And then you mentioned job security. So when I joined another studio, there were some major challenges, in my opinion, happening in the department that I was managing, and attached to the photo studio. And I shared a number of these, and I think the thought maybe was that I was going to try to make these sweeping changes fast, or adjustments, but that wasn't my approach. But it was to say, are all these things happening? And I was told, listen, you'll always have a position here because there are so many things to fix, and that they'll always need you. And my thought to that was, that is not job security. That is actually the opposite of job security. Because you're going to, at one point, somebody's going to come in that's very smart and connected to this department and say, wait a minute, you've been here 5 years and you haven't fixed these things, or why haven't you fixed these things? You had control of fixing these things, but you didn't. If you really want job security, you're hired, I think, to first run a department and then fix a number of things and make it as efficient and high quality as possible. And if you don't do that and you say, well, we have so many things we have to fix, but that's always the case. I think that somebody comes along and says, the studio or digital production is bloated, slow, the quality isn't up to speed, and then they start making changes. And you know what? That's exactly what happened the next year. 20% cut because they watched a West Coast team that had a lot of challenges and an East Coast team that were solving problems and were doing it much more efficiently, budget and quality-wise. And so they said, you have to make these changes on this side. And that is huge. I think, like you said, it doesn't always mean you will have job security, but I don't work to save my job. I work to do the best job I can.
Yeah.
And that is part of it is, listen, you hired me and you pay me this. And guess what? I just saved this, or I saved 3 times this past year. So you're getting me for free.
That's the thing. The smart people will keep that kind of person around, right?
You would, yes.
Even if you solve all their problems, they're going to find stuff for you. So it's, hopefully
I agree.
That job security, follows.
And if they don't keep you around, then you look for a company that sees that value.
Plenty more people that want to have you then. Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah. There's always work if you are good at what you do and you are a pleasure to work with, which only other people can say that about me. I can't say that I don't know if I am. I assume that. I hope that. But and then you make these solutions. You address all the departments that you are connected to. So you address the web team because they need images to upload as fast as possible, but you have to marry quality with speed. Mm-hmm. But if speed determines sales, then if they destroy your image, in my opinion, from the photo studio, our photo tech nerdy selves say, oh, but it creates better sales, so be it. But at least we make sure that is the case. If the DAM is not getting the imagery from digital text, you have to address that and say this has to be delivered a certain way. If your HR partner is not, you're not communicating with them on all the challenges you have with salaries or with what is the word when you're trying to accommodate people for injuries or different things, or hiring or having to let someone go. Mm-hmm. If you're not addressing all of those things, your job is not just to run a photo studio. It's to address your merchants, to address your creative team and your marketing team. Yeah. And I would tell everyone that too. I'd say, you're not a retoucher. You need to make sure the studio is delivering it to you a certain way. So you're connected to the studio. You need to deliver it to the DAM or to the web team a certain way. You have to be that link in the chain. If you're not that, then you're just you're focused or myopic on I want to do my job only well and forget everything else. Well, that's not a corporate or a photo studio digital production environment.
And so I'm curious, we're really talking about documentation and then what you just mentioned here. What have you found to be the most, I guess, effective ways for process documentation, whether it be for a big studio or even, for maybe a retouching studio or maybe a retouching team? Like, are there any software or not workarounds, but like processes of documentation that you found have been very effective when bringing somebody in new, they know how to get acclimated, or if there's a new process you have to submit to a team, what do you find effective in an effective way of doing that? Thanks for sitting in on this week's episode of the Wrap Party Podcast. Stay tuned for part 2 of Sean Arbabi's episode coming soon. We have a lot more to dissect in the work of studio production, what strong leadership skills look like in high volume campaign work, and more. And if you're tired of juggling a million things and want to take your retouching workflow to the next level, Head over to VeryBusy.io and start your 30-day free trial. No strings attached, no credit card needed, just pure productivity. Link in the description box. If you like what you heard today, do us a solid, subscribe and leave us a rating. This will help us reach more creatives just like you. And I'll catch you next time on the Wrap Party podcast powered by VeryBusy.io.